Elden Ring's first expansion, Shadow of the Erdtree, presents a level of challenge similar to that of the later areas in the base game. To make the most of it, players will want to ensure that they have thoroughly prepared themselves with various upgrade and crafting materials from the base game. In addition, specific requirements will need to be completed in order to access the Land of Shadow. All of that will be covered in this guide, and as usual, useful timestamps can be found in the video description. First, if you are new to Elden Ring or are making a new character after some time away from the game, I highly recommend my All Quests in Order plus Missable Content series to get the most out of your base game playthrough, and also if you want to make sure that you don't mess up or miss any quests. That series will also cover a lot of what is found in this video, although there is a good deal of additional useful information in this guide. The one caveat for that series is that I would suggest holding off on defeating Malekith in Farum Azula until after completing the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, as doing so will cause Ofnir the All-Knowing to leave Roundtable Hold, and it seems like he has some unique dialogue pertaining to this expansion. I'll leave a link to a playlist for that guide series near the bottom of this video's description. In any case, while that guide series is ideal for a brand new character, this single guide video is geared more towards collecting all unique upgrade or crafting items in the base game, such as smithing stone and Glovewort bell bearings, legendary upgrade materials, memory stones, cracked and ritual pots, perfume bottles, and so on. Before that though, let's cover how to access the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion. We'll need to defeat two bosses. The first is Starscourge Radahn, and the second is Mohg, Lord of Blood. Also, a quick note, check the pinned comment on this video, as I will post any updates, corrections, or additional important information there. For Starscourge Radahn, we can trigger the Radahn Festival by either completing Blythe's quest, or by resting at a Site of Grace in Altus Plateau. The latter option is definitely a bit more straightforward, so let's go with that. To reach Altus Plateau, we'll need the two Dectus Medallion halves. The left half can be found in Fort Height, near the southeast edge of Limgrave. After entering the fort, we'll head up the northwest stairs to the second level. We can then climb the ladder in the tower to the southeast, which leads directly to a chest containing the left half of the Dectus Medallion. For the right half, we'll need to go to Fort Faroth in Caelid. A shortcut to this area of Caelid can be found near the Third Church of Marika in Limgrave. Northeast of the church is a portal that will take us to the Bestial Sanctum. From there we can move south, running past the dragon that guards the Farum Great Bridge, then continue following the road southwest. We'll head southeast at the fork, and maneuver around the giant dragon Grail to reach the fort. Next, to get the medallion, we just need to enter the fort and run northeast to the ladder. At the top, we can open the chest to get the Dectus Medallion's right half. If you continue moving deeper into the fort, you may find a legendary talisman, but that's a bit beyond the scope of this video. Now, to reach the Grand Lift of Dectus, we can head north through the Great Lake in Liurnia. There is a spirit spring located a short distance northwest of the Rea Lucaria Crystal Tunnel, which can be used to easily access the road leading northeast, directly to the lift. With the Dectus Medallion, we can then use the lift to reach Altus Plateau, and then both discover and rest at the Site of Grace a short distance north. With that done, the Radahn Festival should be available. To reach it, we'll head down to the impassable Great Bridge in Caelid. There, a teleporter will take us to the heart of Redmane Castle. After discovering the Site of Grace and the chamber outside the plaza, we can move north into the plaza itself. Feel free to speak with the NPCs here, as doing so with the Finger Maiden will unlock the polite bow gesture. To initiate the actual Starscourge Radahn fight, we need to speak with Jaren, the NPC standing up on the castle wall. Make sure to wait until he finishes speaking to get the heartening cry gesture. Once that is done, we can move northwest into the church, then out the east door. The lift will take us down to the beach, and a portal there will take us to the nearby battlefield. Radahn is a fairly tough boss, but we are given a lot of help in the form of summonable allies that can be resummoned whenever they die. Just get on Torrent and focus on avoiding projectiles, while also interacting with any gold summoning signs to bring allies into the fight. Defeating Radahn opens up a path to Nokron Eternal City near Fort Feroth, which will be important later in this video, but as far as accessing the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC is concerned, defeating Radahn is as far as we need to take things. Now let's cover the other prerequisites for accessing this DLC, defeating Mohg, Lord of Blood. Doing this is required because Mohg is guarding the entrance to the Land of Shadow, which is Miquella's cocoon. Before we can even entertain the idea of challenging Mohg, we first need to reach Mohgwyn Palace. There are two ways to do this, and the first is by completing Varre's quest, so let's cover that now, as it is definitely the easier option. White Mask Varre is initially found near the first step Site of Grace, right at the start of the game. After defeating the first Shardbearer boss, which will most likely be Godric the Grafted in Stormveil Castle, we can go speak with Varre. He will ask us to go speak with Finger Reader Enya in Roundtable Hold, and after doing that, we can return to Varre's spot near the first step. He will no longer be there, but we can read the message there to unlock the Bravo gesture. Next, we'll need to find Varre at his second location, which is in Liurnia. He is located at the Rose Church, a short distance west of the fallen ruins of the lake, Site of Grace. In response to Varre's question, we should say they didn't seem right. We can then speak to Varre again to receive 5 festering bloody fingers, and speak to him a couple more times to make sure we've exhausted all of his dialogue. The next step in this quest can be completed in one of two ways. If you are playing online, you can use the bloody fingers to invade other players' worlds. Completing 3 invasions this way, regardless of winning or losing, will satisfy the requirements of this step. Alternatively, this quest can be completed offline by invading and defeating the NPC Magnus the Beastclaw. He is located in Altus Plateau, which we covered how to reach when talking about Radahn, so I won't go into that again. Once in Altus Plateau, we'll need to make our way to the Writheblood ruins. Moving northeast of the Grand Lift, we'll eventually reach the forest-spanning Great Bridge, where a portal can take us to the other side. We can then move southwest, jumping down some tombstones, and move further southwest to reach the Writheblood ruins. The red summoning sign should be located in the ruins furthest to the northeast, and we can interact with it to invade Magnus's world. After successfully defeating Magnus or completing 3 online invasions with the Bloody Fingers, we can return to the Rose Church. When speaking with Varre, we need to say "Anoint me," and in response, Varre will give us the Lord of Blood's favor. For this next step, we'll need to reach the Church of Inhibition. Starting at the Grand Lift of Dectus Site of Grace, we'll move southwest up the nearby hill. There is a tower here with a frenzied flame eye that inflicts madness whenever it has line of sight, so make use of the large rocks as cover. Also, we can shut down this frenzied eye permanently by climbing up the tower and defeating all of the enemies that are responsible for casting it. After that, we can discover the Site of Grace to the southeast, then move southwest into the Frenzied Flame village. The main path that goes through the village will eventually lead us to the Church of Inhibition. There, we'll need to defeat the festering fingerprint Vike invader before being allowed to enter the church. After doing that, we can go into the church and pick up the Finger Maiden armor set, then interact with the Maiden to dye the cloth from Varre with Maiden's blood. With that in hand, we will return to the Rose Church for the last time and speak with Varre multiple times. As a reward for our efforts, he will give us the Bloody Finger, which allows for unlimited online invasions. Speaking with Varre once more will get us the item we are really after though, which is the Pure Blood Knight's Medal. Using this item will take us directly to the foot of Mohgwyn Palace. We will do a walkthrough of the palace to reach its final boss, but first let's cover the other way to reach Mohgwyn Palace for anyone that killed Varre or otherwise messed up his questline. This alternative route will also cover the required steps for reaching the Consecrated Snowfield area and completing Latenna's quest however, so feel free to watch for those reasons too. As you might have guessed, the other way to reach Mohgwyn Palace is through the Consecrated Snowfield. In order to access that area though, we will need both halves of the Haligtree secret medallion. Before doing that though, check your inventory to make sure that you don't already have one half of the Haligtree medallion. If you already do have one half of it, wait to collect the second one until speaking with Latenna. If you collect both halves of the Haligtree medallion before speaking to her, you will miss out on a Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. Okay, assuming we don't have either half of the Haligtree medallion, we'll start by going to the village of the Albinaurics. To get to the village, head northwest from the scenic Isle Site of Grace in Liurnia, passing into the large poisonous cavern beneath Moonlight Altar. Sticking to the west, a trail of bodies will lead up into the village. Albus is a short distance east from the Site of Grace. However, there is a depraved perfumer enemy along the way that will need to be defeated, otherwise putting Albus in danger. Albus is initially disguised as a pot, and we can dodge roll into him to dispel that disguise. Speaking through all of Albus's dialogue will get us the right half of the Haligtree medallion. Albus will also ask us to seek out a young Albinauric by the name of Latenna, and upon further interaction, will fade away. Given that this is the first half of the medallion we have, returning to Roundtable Hold will trigger an invasion from Ensha. After defeating him, we can pick up his armor set near Gideon's study, and we can speak with Gideon to gain clues on Latenna's whereabouts, but it's totally optional. Now to start Latenna's quest, we will head directly south of the Scenic Isle site of Grace, eventually arriving at the entrance of the Lakeside Crystal Cave. From there, we'll carefully make our way down through the Crystal Cave until reaching a boss room at the end. A Bloodhound Knight guards the exit of the Crystal Cave, and defeating it will get us the Cerulean Amber Medallion Talisman. We can then continue on to the Slumbering Wolf Shack. There, we should find Latenna and her companion Wolf Lobo. At first, Latenna will be defensive, but showing her the half of the Haligtree medallion will soften her demeanor. We'll need to agree to Latenna's request, then speak with her once more. She will transform into her spiritual form so that she may accompany us on our journey. At this point, we can collect the other half of the Haligtree medallion, whichever one it is that we are missing. If you're following this video, that will be the left half, and for that, we will need to reach the Mountaintops of the Giants. Now, a quick warning here is that going to the Mountaintops of the Giants will skip over a few steps of Yura's quest. This will ultimately result in the loss of the Raptor of the Mist's Ash of War. It's not a huge deal to miss, but I will leave a link for a guide on Yura's quest near the bottom of this video's description for anyone that is interested in doing it first. Assuming we already defeated two Shardbearer bosses, those being Godric and Radahn, we can enter Leyndell through the Capital Rampart, which is located on the northeast side of the city. We will then need to make our way through Leyndell to reach the Elden Throne, where we'll need to defeat Morgott the Omen King. Again, I have a more comprehensive walkthrough of Leyndell, which I will leave a link to near the bottom of this video's description. But in any case, after defeating Morgott, we will need to try and enter the Erdtree. After that fails, we can return to the Elden Throne to discover a new site of grace. Sitting there will lead to Melina giving us the Rolled Medallion. With that, we can go to the Avenue Balcony site of grace, then move northeast down the main avenue. Beyond the large set of double doors, which we should be able to open, there is a long path and a couple of lifts that lead us to the Forbidden Lands. From there, we can move further northeast to the Grand Lift of Rold. This will take us to the Mountaintops of the Giants. Next, we will need to journey even further north through the Mountaintops to reach Castle Sol. We can head east towards the freezing lake site of Grace, then loop around going east, north, and then southwest to reach a set of safe drops that will take us the rest of the way to Castle Sol. I'll do a quick walkthrough of Castle Sol to reach the final boss, but I'm going to skip past a couple of unique items, so feel free to explore this area on your own. There is a lift near the boss room that we should activate, as it will act as a shortcut should we die to the boss. Also, if any enemies are chasing you, I recommend logging out and back in to get them to despawn. The boss of Castle Sol is Commander Nile. He is a tough boss, so I recommend a strong level 10 summons, such as Black Knife Tish, in order to take him down. Commander Nile drops the Veteran's Prosthesis when defeated, and also makes the Veteran's Armor Set available for purchase from Finger Reader Enia at Round Table Hold. After defeating Nile, we will ascend the tower to the north using the lift and retrieve the left half of the Haligtree Medallion. Once we have both halves of the Haligtree Medallion, we'll go to the Grand Lift of Worlds Site of Grace to use it. Standing where we are prompted to use the rolled medallion, we will instead flip through the options to get the Hoist the Secret Medallion option. Doing so will take us to the hidden path to the Haligtree. While we make our way through here, we're going to drop down to the invisible platforms to grab the Silver Scarab Talisman because it's a useful talisman to have. Then, we can go ahead and find another invisible platform to run along to get back to solid ground. The lever to open the boss chamber is right around here, which you can go ahead and defeat. But for the purposes of this video, we'll just go straight to the lift, which will take us to the exit of this dungeon. The next step is to get through the Snowfield, but extremely low visibility can make that difficult. We are supposed to follow the lights on the ground to make our way, but honestly, it's easier to just take a straight path, and all that is required is the compass on our HUD. Starting from the cave opening, we'll head almost directly north, with a slight tilt towards the east. We should quickly reach the Consecrated Snowfield's Site of Grace. From there, we will want to head as directly north as we can manage. We should be able to travel a pretty far distance without any obstacles. Eventually, a cluster of rocky formations that are directly in our path will become visible. We'll skirt around the right side to make a safe drop down to the ground below. Then head northwest to find the inner Consecrated Snowfield Site of Grace a very short distance away. Visibility will clear up substantially when we move north from this location. We can quickly grab the map fragment a little further north, then double back to the Site of Grace. Also, we can finish Latenna's quest later in this video when it becomes relevant. For now, let's get to Mohgwyn Palace. We'll move west with just a slight tilt towards the north. This should take us to some large trees and fields of red flowers. As we approach, the Sanguine Noble NPC will invade us. Defeating him gets us the Sanguine Noble armor set and clears the path forward. A little further west, beyond the trees, we'll find a blood-soaked portal. It will take us to a tunnel which leads to the Palace Approach Ledge Road Site of Grace. From there, we'll need to make our way north, then northwest through the somewhat perilous Lake of Blood to reach the palace grounds. Navigating Mohgwyn Palace isn't too difficult. After discovering the mausoleum entrance site of grace, we'll move up the winding path of steps towards the palace's interior. This is where things can get difficult, as a dangerous enemy will spawn in to try and stop our progress. We'll need to move quickly down the west tunnel and go through the first opening to the north. We can jump up a rocky formation as a sort of shortcut, then continue northeast to exit the cave. This will take us to the Dynasty Mausoleum midpoint site of grace, which is just a stone's throw away from Mohg, Lord of Blood. Now, there are two important things to do before we go fight Mohg. The first, which isn't completely necessary, is to defeat the nameless White Mask invader near the southern edge of the Blood Lake. This NPC invader drops the White Mask armor set when defeated, and the White Mask in particular is extremely good for bleed-based builds. At the time of publishing this video, the nameless White Mask NPC will not invade after Mohg, Lord of Blood, has been defeated. The second thing we'll want to do before fighting Mohg is to prepare by retrieving two items. The first is the Purifying Crystal Tear. This can be mixed into the Wondrous Physic Flask to counter Mohg's Rite of Blood curse, which is extremely lethal if left untreated. Normally, the Purifying Crystal Tear is obtained as part of Yura's quest. However, if we have already been to the Mountaintops of the Giants, we can just go straight to the Second Church of Marika in Altus Plateau. There, we should be invaded by Eleonora, Violet Bloody Finger. When defeated, she will drop her unique pole blade, along with the Purifying Crystal Tear. As a quick aside, we can also go to wherever we last spoke with Yura to find his Naga Kiba. For me, that was his initial location, a short distance west of the Aegeo Lake South site of Grace, in Limgrave. Also, if you haven't yet gotten the Wondrous Physic Flask, you can find it at the Third Church of Marika in Limgrave. This next item is not completely necessary, but it is definitely helpful. It's Mohg's Shackle, and it can be found in the Subterranean Shunning-Grounds beneath Lanedale. To reach it, we'll start at the West Capital Rampart site of Grace and move northwest past a couple of enemies. After dropping down the ladder, we can carefully drop down to the ruins below and move northeast towards the treasure scarab that drops the Thunderbolt Ash of War. A little further north is a water well, which we can jump down into. Moving forward down the only available path will eventually take us to the Subterranean Shunning-Grounds. Going northeast, we should quickly find a pair of open doors leading to the underground roadside site of Grace. From there, we will move back out the door, then veer northeast down the road. Near the end of the road are several iron grates and an opening to the tunnel below. Dropping down, we'll head a short distance northwest, then turn northeast into the pipe near a group of rats. We'll want to watch out for two holes in the pipe as we move through it, only turning when the pipe forces us to. We will eventually reach an intersection and we want to go down the southeast path, the one with an iron grate entrance. It will quickly open up into a small chamber where we can either fight a couple of omens or just dodge past them, quickly climbing up the ladder. We need to go through the pair of doors to the south, but there is also a shortcut that can be opened up to the west, which leads back to our previous site of grace. It's a good idea to open this shortcut if you want to play things on the safe side. In any case, once we've gotten through that door, we'll turn east and carefully drop down to the staircase below. Moving down it, we'll then run southeast through a tunnel filled with zombies. In the next chamber, we will drop down next to a staircase, then move southwest into another pipe system. We need to head southwest past several basilisks, then turn northwest when it's our only option to move forward. The omen in the following chamber has a nasty ranged attack that will thwart any attempts at climbing the ladder, so I recommend defeating it before moving onward, and it will also drop the unique omen bairn when defeated. After picking that up, we can climb the tall ladder nearby. Moving northwest, we can open the set of doors, which will lead directly back to the underground roadside site of grace. We can rest at it if needed, then move southeast through the now open door. If there is a better way of getting down to the pit below, I am unaware of it. For my part, I just drop down to the pipes on the southwest side of the wooden bridge. Move further down northeast, then dodge roll to the southwest, which results in a more significant drop to some pipes near the bottom of the pit. We will take some damage because of this, but it is totally survivable. Dropping down to the pit, watch out for the lobsters as they are very nasty. Once they have been dealt with, we'll move southeast. There are some useful items to grab along the way, but we are mainly going for the blue item near the southeast edge of this pit. It is Mohg's Shackle, and once we have it, we can duck into the nearby hole in the wall, which should provide cover from the lobsters. Feel free to discover the Langdale Catacomb site of grace here before leaving. All that's left to do is defeat Mohg, Lord of Blood. Returning to the Dynasty Mausoleum midpoint, we will want to make sure to mix the Purifying Crystal Tear into our Physic Flask, as well as equip Mohg's Shackle for quick use. We can then make our way southwest to the lift, which will take us to Mohg, Lord of Blood. You don't have to defeat Mohg right now. I'm sure a lot of people will want to wait for the expansion's launch before fighting him. That being said, Mohg is pretty tough, so I will cover some basic tips to make the fight easier. First off, I'm using the Blasphemous Blade as my weapon of choice, which is not very good against him, as he seems to be resistant to fire. Bleed damage, on the other hand, seems to be pretty effective. I'm also using the Black Knife Tish Spirit Summon, which is really good against Mohg. To start, we want to save our Physic Flask until just before Mohg enters his second phase. During the first phase of the fight, we can use Mohg's Shackle 2 or more times to temporarily snare him and leave him open to attacks. Pay attention to Mohg's chants as they indicate how close he is to his second phase. He will say Trace, Duo, and finally Unis. When he says Unis, use the Physic Flask with the Purifying Crystal Tear. This will prevent his Blood Rite from inflicting any damage, and we can use that time to recast buffs, heal, or do anything else that requires a bit of time. Mohg's second phase is quite a bit tougher than the first, but I've found that Black Knife Tish can pretty much handle it solo as long as she hasn't been damaged too much by that point. Also, if you have any items or talismans that increase rune gain, I highly suggest using them quickly after Mohg is defeated, as he grants a base 420,000 runes when defeated. After defeating him, we can discover the new site of grace nearby to allow for a quick return to the Cocoon of the Empyrean, otherwise known as Mikola. From all the information available, Mikola's Cocoon will be the entrance to the Land of Shadow. Now, the next part of this guide is going to cover Smithing Stone and Somber Stone Miners' Bell Bearings. I'll do my best to strike a balance between thorough and concise, but feel free to reach out in the comments if you are struggling to find anything. The Smithing Stone Miners' Bell Bearing 1 is located in the Rea Lucaria Crystal Tunnel in Liurnia. The entrance to this cave can be found tucked into the mountainside just east of a nearby walking mausoleum. I will just be showing the quickest path to the boss room, but feel free to explore and loot on your own. It's a fairly large cave system, but it's not too difficult to navigate. The only thing of note is a lift about 2/3 of the way through, which can be activated to serve as a shortcut back to the entrance. The boss here is a single Crystallian. It is initially resistant to all types of damage, but once its poise has been broken by heavy attacks, it becomes extremely vulnerable. When defeated, it drops the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell-Bearing 1, which can be offered to the Twin Maiden husks at Round Table Hold. Doing so will make an unlimited amount of Smithing Stones 1 and 2 available for purchase from them. Moving on, the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell-Bearing 2 is located in the sealed tunnel outside of Lanedale. To reach it, we'll start at the Outer Wall Phantom Tree site of Grace and move east. A rocky path that goes down into the outer moat should be pretty easy to spot, and once we're down, we can move south towards the sealed tunnel's entrance. There is an illusory wall that we can roll through just south of the sealed tunnel site of Grace. A short distance southwest, we will find a chest containing the bell bearing. If you roll into the wall behind the chest, it will reveal a tunnel leading deeper into the dungeon. Feel free to explore on your own, but going any further is beyond the scope of this video, and we can just retrace our steps to return to the surface. When offered to the Twin Maiden husks, this bell bearing makes Smithing Stones 3 and 4 available for purchase. Next up, we have the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell-Bearing 3. It's located in the Mountaintops of the Giants, which we covered how to reach as part of reaching Mohgwyn Palace. Starting from the Zammer Ruins site of Grace, we can move south up along the side of the ruins. We should eventually see a torchlit staircase leading down to a small chamber. There, we'll find a chest containing the bell bearing, which will make Smithing Stones 5 and 6 available for purchase from the Twin Maiden husks. The Smithing Stone Miner's Bell-Bearing 4 is located in the Crumbling Farum Azula. To reach it, we'll need to journey through the mountaintops until reaching the Forge of the Giants. The Fire Giant boss will need to be defeated before we can make our way up to and along the rim of the Forge to a site of Grace. A quick warning here about Corrin/Goldmask's questline. If you haven't completed the step of that quest that involves the Law of Regression spell, then doing this next step will lock you out of completing their quest. As I've said before, I will leave a link for a guide on that quest near the bottom of this video's description. In any case, when resting at that particular site of Grace, we will need to either speak with Melina and tell her that we're ready, or if we inherited the Frenzied Flame, we will need to listen to the sounds of flame. Doing either of these will take us to the Crumbling Farum Azula. We will then need to make our way through the crumbling ruins until reaching the Dragon Temple. Going down the stairs, we will then need to face off with the Godskin duo. They are tough, but in all likelihood there should be a summoning sign for Recusant Bernal, who will assist in the battle. Upon their defeat, the Godskin duo will drop the Black Flame Tornado Ash of War, along with the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 4. This is the last bell bearing for regular smithing stones, and is used to make smithing stones 7 and 8 available for purchase from the Twin Maiden husks. Next up are the Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearings, and there are 5 in total. For the first, we'll need to make our way to the Celia Crystal Tunnel. The entrance is a short distance northwest of the Celia Understair Site of Grace. Feel free to explore and loot this cave on your own, but I will just be taking the most direct path to the boss room. Making our way up and into the first chamber, we'll need to jump over to the roof of the central wooden structure. We can then jump east into a collapsed wooden structure and continue moving up into the tunnel. Along the way, there is a ladder that can be dropped, which serves as a shortcut back to the entrance. Just a bit further into the tunnel, we will reach the boss room, where a falling star beast is waiting. It will drop several smithing stones when defeated, along with the Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 1. This unlocks Somber Smithing Stones 1 and 2 at the Twin Maiden husks. Next is the Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 2, located in Althus Tunnel. To get there, we'll start at the forest-spanning Great Bridge Site of Grace and move north down into the forest. Once we're down, we can move south and just a touch east to go around a small ridge blocking our path. To steal a line from Blythe, the way ahead is pleasingly simple, at least as far as this tunnel is concerned. We just need to keep moving east through the tunnel until reaching the boss room, where 2 Crystallians are waiting. Both have the same weakness to heavy attacks, and they drop the Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 2 when defeated, which unlocks Somber Smithing Stones 3 and 4 at the Twin Maiden husks. Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 3 is located at the First Church of Marika in the Mountaintops of the Giants. I find it easiest to reach by moving east from the Frozen Lake Site of Grace until reaching the edge of the lake. Then running southeast along the lake's edge until reaching the church. The bell bearing can be found on a body in front of the church and unlocks Somber Smithing Stones 5 and 6 at the Twin Maiden husks. Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearings 4 and 5 are both located in the Crumbling Farum Azula, which we covered how to reach when getting the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 4. The Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 4 is located right next to the Tempest-facing balcony Site of Grace. It unlocks Somber Smithing Stones 7 and 8 at the Twin Maiden husks. Meanwhile, we will need to journey through the majority of this area to get the Somber Stone Miner's Bell Bearing 5. It is closest to the Site of Grace beside the Great Bridge. If you haven't already gotten it, it can be found by going down the lift to the east, then southwest into the altar room. It will be sitting on a body in front of the altar, and it unlocks Somber Smithing Stones 9 at the Twin Maiden husks. Before moving on to the Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearings, let's cover the regular and Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stones. The regular ones are needed to upgrade standard or common weapons to plus 25, and there are a total of 13 that can be obtained in a single playthrough. The Somber ones are needed to upgrade unique weapons to plus 10, and there are a total of 8 that can be obtained in a single playthrough. The first standard Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone can be found in the Mountaintops of the Giants, southeast of the Church of Repose. It is hidden within the mouth of the giant skull nearby. An easy Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone is right near the Dynasty Mausoleum midpoint Site of Grace. It's just a short distance southeast, in a chest guarded by several nasty enemies. Personally, I recommend using area attacks to wipe them out before going for the Smithing Stone. For the next handful of Smithing Stones, we will be returning to Farum, Azula. Starting at the Crumbling Beastgrave Site of Grace, we can move west out into an open area. Making our way across will trigger a dragon fight. Once the dragon is defeated, we will be rewarded with an Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. For our third Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone, we will start at the Dragon Temple Altar Site of Grace. Moving down the north staircase, we can take the standard path down to the lower area. Once there, we will move north and look for a spiral staircase leading up to the east. At the top, we'll need to carefully jump and move south across a floating pillar to a secluded area where the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone can be found. The fourth Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone, as well as our second Somber one, is obtained from another dragon. This one is located to the south of the Dragon Temple Rooftop Site of Grace, and will be aiming bolts of red lightning at us as we try to get close to it. Fortunately, it is already severely damaged, so it shouldn't take too much effort to finish off. We will automatically get the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone upon its defeat, and we can then move a very short distance southeast to retrieve the Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone from within a gazebo. The next three Ancient Dragon Smithing Stones are all located in the Consecrated Snowfield. We covered how to get here near the Mohgwyn Palace walkthrough part of this video. Starting from the inner Consecrated Snowfield Site of Grace, we'll move east down the frozen river. There is a tough magma worm boss near the end of it that we can fight if we want, but we don't need to. Instead, we can just go around it, climbing up the ice-encased rocks to reach the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone before returning to the Site of Grace. The next Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone will require us to pass time until night at the inner Consecrated Snowfield Site of Grace. A short distance to the southwest is a moving caravan, which is guarded by 2 Knights Cavalry during the night. Both will need to be defeated in a single life or before resting in order to get the rewards. I recommend kiting them away from the caravan one at a time, as it's much easier to fight each one-on-one than both at the same time. I found the Blasphemous Blade to be pretty effective when timing its weapon skill right, but use whatever tactic you find to be effective. Upon defeating both Knights Cavalry in a single life, we will get the full Knight's Cavalry armor set as well as an Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. The final Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone is located within the Yellow Annex Tunnel. It can be reached by traveling southwest from the inner Consecrated Snowfield Site of Grace. Once inside, we'll need to carefully drop down a broken lift chamber, then move southeast into the tunnel. Dropping into an even deeper pit, we will find the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone in the northern corner. To escape this tunnel, we will then need to go east and climb up the ladder. We'll then turn north and jump across a gap, continuing on to find another set of ladders to climb up. This path will eventually take us west, past an Alabaster Lord, the boss chamber, and finally a shortcut back to the tunnel's entrance. Feel free to fight the boss if you want, but it's not necessary. For our next Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone, we will return to the inner Consecrated Snowfield Site of Grace, then move northwest along the Frozen River. We should be invaded by Anastasia Tarnished Eater, and defeating her will get us the Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. If you've been following this video from the start, then you should be on the final step of Latenna's questline. To do it, we'll need to travel to the Apostate Derelict Church, which is in the northwest corner of the Snowfields. It's guarded by a walking mausoleum that launches glowing blue mortars at anyone approaching. Even with decent evasive skills, it is a bit of a coin toss whether or not we'll make it on any given attempt. Once we do reach the Apostate Derelict, we can head inside and approach the giant Albinauric. Right near the Silver Mirror Shield, we should also get the option to summon Latenna. Again, this is only possible if we successfully completed the initial step for Latenna's quest. After Latenna speaks a few words, we can speak with her to get the Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. For the next few Ancient Dragon Smithing Stones, we will need to get to the Haligtree. Assuming that we're already in the Consecrated Snowfield, we'll then need to head to Ordina, Liturgical Town. Personally, I use the Assassin's Gambit Ash of War here, but it's not completely necessary. What we'll need to do is go north into the town, then loop east around the buildings to reach the Everjail entrance. After reading the plaque, we should be able to enter the Everjail. Once inside, we can use the Assassin's Gambit Ash of War if it's available to prevent detection by the Albinauric archers on the rooftops, as well as the invisible Black Knife assassins on the ground. Our objective is to light 4 flames to dispel the seals in the town. We'll reach the first by moving southwest and jumping over a small barrier to access a ladder to the rooftops. A second ladder will take us to the first flame. We can use Assassin's Gambit once more before dropping down to the eastern rooftop. We'll then need to cross several rooftops towards the northeast, where an Albinauric archer will be stationed. Assassin's Gambit will prevent her from detecting us until we draw near, which makes the task much easier. Once she's been dealt with, we can climb up the nearby ladders to reach the second flame. We can then return to the starting point of the Everjail, reapply Assassin's Gambit, and start working our way across the rooftops towards the west side of the town. Staying on the rooftops will help us avoid the invisible Black Knife assassins, which are a huge pain to deal with. After dealing with the second Albinauric archer, we can continue hopping across rooftops towards the west side of town. There, we'll climb up a ladder to reach the third flame. We'll want to reapply Assassin's Gambit one last time before returning to the ground and making a mad dash southeast to the fourth and final flame. If you die at any time while doing this challenge, know that all of your progress will be saved, so you don't need to go back to any flames that you've already lit. As a quick bonus, we can go ahead and grab the Black Knife armor set from beneath the nearby staircase before jumping back up into the town and heading up the staircase ourselves. Completing the Everjail will have removed a seal there, allowing us to access a teleporter that will take us to Miquella's Haligtree. I have a more thorough walkthrough of Miquella's Haligtree in part 7 of my complete guide series, so for this video we will just focus on the smithing stones. For the first one, we'll start at the Haligtree Town Site of Grace. We'll make our way to the town plaza, grabbing an ancient dragon smithing stone along the way. It is guarded by a misbegotten warrior, but we can use the Assassin's Gambit to help us grab it and begin our escape to the next Site of Grace before the misbegotten reacts. The next ancient dragon smithing stone can be obtained just after defeating Loretta, Knight of the Haligtree. Starting at the Haligtree Promenade Site of Grace, we'll move north and down a spiral staircase, then slide down an extremely tall ladder. We should be able to see a chest while descending, and that is the one that will contain our prize. Moving up to the roof of this tower, we can open the chest to get our next ancient dragon smithing stone. Afterwards, we can go into the tower and take the lift down to the prayer room. Next up, we'll get a Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. Starting from the prayer room Site of Grace, we'll head out the north side and run past several soldiers. We'll then move east along an arch and drop down to the outer wall of the Haligtree. There is a putrid avatar here, which we can fight if we want, but it's not completely necessary. In any case, we will need to make our way southwest to the end of the wall, where the Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone is waiting. For a second stone, we will return to the prayer room and run out the north side once more. This time though, we'll keep running north, jumping to the last arch along this path, then to a rooftop fountain area from there. Feel free to grab the legendary Ash of War from within the room to the west, then jump to another arch further north. We can climb it to a secluded room where a chest containing another Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone is waiting. Now let's talk about some of the more situational legendary smithing stones. The first requires completing Millicent's quest by assisting her in the fight against her 4 sisters. Doing so will allow us to get the unalloyed gold needle back from her. We can then use that needle on the flower that Malenia leaves behind when defeated to get both Miquella's needle as well as a Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. Moving on, Garank, located within the Bestial Sanctum, will give us an Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone once we fed him all 8 Death Roots. I cover how to get all Death Roots near the start of Part 8 in my complete guide series. Jaren will give us an Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone if we side with him against Sellen at the end of her questline. However, doing this will lock us out of many rewards from Sellen's quest, including both Lusat's and Azur's armor sets. In any case, I will leave a link to a guide for Sellen's quest near the bottom of this video's description. Next up, we can actually get 2 Ancient Dragon Smithing Stones for completing Nefeli's questline, so long as we don't kill Gatekeeper Gestalk. Once Nefeli's quest is completed, we can speak with her in the chamber that is north from the Godric the Grafted Site of Grace. She will reward us with a free Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. If Gestalk is alive and nearby, we can also speak with him to open his shop, which will now have a single Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone available for purchase at a price of 20,000 runes. That just leaves one final Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. The reason why I don't recommend getting this one is because it requires defeating Malekith the Black Blade in Farum Azula, which will turn Leyndell into the capital of Ash. Assuming we've already done this, which again I'm not recommending, we can start at the capital of Ash Site of Grace and move west towards the Giant Dragon. We'll need to climb up its wing to reach what remains of the West Capital ramparts. From there, we can drop down west towards the fortified manor. I don't have footage of picking up the Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone, but it should be in this approximate location near the outside wall of the fortified manor. Next up, let's cover the Grave and Ghost Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearings, which we'll need if we want to easily upgrade any new spirit summons we come across in the DLC. We'll start with the basic Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearings. The first one is located in Windham Catacombs, which we can reach by heading north of the Erdtree Gazing Hill Site of Grace in Altus Plateau. These catacombs are fairly straightforward. The only tricky part is in the final trap chamber, where the lever needs to be pulled to open the boss chamber. After pulling the lever, we'll need to cross back over to the pocket on the north side and use it to let the trap floor reset so that we can return to the lower level. Now, the cool thing here is that there is a secret space that we can go to beneath the trap floor when it rises up. This leads to a separate area with the Ancient Dragon Apostles Cookbook 1. There is also a lever to open the Iron Grate, which will allow us to get back to the start of the dungeon. Once there, we can head through the now open set of iron doors to reach the boss chamber, where a watchdog will be waiting. Defeating it will reward us with the Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearing 1, which unlocks Grave Gloveworts 1, 2, and 3 at the Twin Maiden Husks. For the second bell bearing, we'll need to make our way to the Giant's Mountaintop Catacombs. It is located near the south side of the large bridge that leads to the ancient Snow Valley ruins. From the south side of that bridge, move down the small path to the southeast to reach the entrance of the catacombs. Now, these catacombs can actually be pretty confusing as it purposefully tries to trick you. We'll start by heading down the first set of stairs, then turn down the north hallway, which should lead us to a stone lift. After riding it down, we'll move past the closed boss chamber and make our way to another lift. We will then move south towards a statue. When we reach the chamber it's in, turn west and move up the staircase, then watch out for traps as we follow this path, through a room with giant guillotines, before turning to move up the east staircase. Moving past all of the land squirts, we can quickly grab a ritual pot from the northmost room before doubling back a short distance to drop down a small hole to the west. The area we drop into may look familiar, but it's actually an entirely new room. We will next need to drop down to the floor where the statue is, then move down the north hallway to the room with a lift. We'll activate the lift and then step off of it, dropping down to the hidden chamber beneath. Moving south, we'll reach the actual chamber we were looking for, and we can move around the pit to get at the lever that will open the boss chamber for these catacombs. All that's left is to drop down one level and move north to the lift, which will take us towards the boss chamber. Moving up the stairs, the boss chamber will be on our left. There, we'll need to defeat an ulcerated tree spirit, and it will drop a golden seed along with the Glovewort Picker's Bellbearing 2. Which unlocks grave Gloveworts 4, 5, and 6 at the Twin Maiden husks. We can also grab the Death Root from the chest near the back while we're here. Thankfully, the last Glovewort Picker's Bellbearing isn't too difficult to get. We'll start from the Tempest-facing balcony site of Grace and Crumbling Farum Azula, then move southwest through the temple. On the other side, we'll find a lift to take us down to a lower level. We'll then need to move east along the northern rocky formations. This will take us to a scenic pond with a gazebo to the southwest. There, we'll find the Glovewort Picker's Bellbearing 3, which unlocks grave Gloveworts 7, 8, and 9 at the Twin Maiden husks. Next up, we're going to get the Ghost Glovewort Picker's Bellbearings. Once again, there are 3 in total, and these are most easily obtained as part of completing Ranni's quest. Fortunately, if you've been following this video and already defeated Radahn, there isn't much left to do. First, we need to go speak with Ranni at her rise if we haven't already done so. It's located at the end of Caria Manor in northwest Liurnia. Starting from the main Caria Manor gate, we will head northwest, watching out for the finger creepers in the ground. We should eventually reach a small building with a staircase leading up to the manor lower level site of Grace. From there, we'll move southeast across the ramparts, eventually turning north to reach a lift that will take us up to the manor upper level. From here, it's pretty easy to reach the Royal Moon Gazing Grounds, where we'll need to defeat Royal Knight Loretta before exiting out to the northwest. Ranni's Rise is the largest of the 3 and is located to the southwest. Glintstone Dragon Adula is guarding her rise, and we can fight it if we want, but it will run away at around half health. In any case, we just need to head to the top of Ranni's Rise and speak with her. If she is missing, you may need to undergo absolution or defeat Radahn if you haven't already. We will need to agree to serve Ranni the Witch, and afterwards go to the lower levels of her rise to speak with her other allies. Since we've already defeated Radahn, only Celavis and EG will be present, but that is okay. Just a quick warning before progressing further: if we continue Ranni's quest, it will lock us out of Celavis's quest. So if you want to complete his quest and get the Magic Scorpion Charm, make sure to follow his quest guide, which I'll leave a link to near the bottom of this video's description, before continuing on with this guide. That aside, now that we've entered Ranni's service, we can make our way into Nokron Eternal City. Defeating Radahn causes a giant crater to appear just northwest of Fort Height West in Limgrave. We can carefully make our way down into this crater to reach the entrance of Nokron. Along the way to the first site of grace here, we can sprint jump across a bottomless pit to reach the Ghost Flame Torch. Personally, I really like this torch because it provides excellent lighting for guide videos, but I've had a lot of people ask where to get it, so this is where. Moving on, we'll continue heading north/northeast to eventually reach the Nokron Eternal City site of grace. The first Ghost Glovewort bell bearing is actually close by, just a short distance east beside a gazebo. It unlocks Ghost Gloveworts 1, 2, and 3 at the Twin Maiden Husks. To reach the next bell bearing, we'll need to reach Noxtella, another Eternal City. This is most easily accomplished by progressing Ranni's questline, which we are already in the process of. From our current location, we will go down the staircase to the northeast, then move southeast to the Mimic Tier Arena. As a quick tip, you can take off any weapons you have equipped before approaching the Mimic Tier, then re-equip them while the Mimic Tier is copying your weaponless form. It makes the fight much easier. After that fight, we can exit to the northeast and ride Torrent along the bridge until reaching the Ancestral Woods. The site of grace for these woods is located a short distance northwest. From this site of grace, we can hop down to the rooftops of Nokron and make our way deeper into the city. Along the way, we can also pick up the Black Whetblade and get the powerful Mimic tier summons if we have a Stone Sword key to spare. I unfortunately did not at the time of recording this footage. In any case, we'll drop down to the lower level of this building where we can defeat a Mimic tier ball to get a larval tier. We'll then move out the southwest exit and activate the nearby Site of Grace. From here, we'll move northeast towards the temple in the distance. The last Mimic tier in our way will transform into a troll, but we can always defeat it from a range to stop that from happening. The chest in the temple can only be opened after entering Ranni's service and contains the Fingerslayer Blade quest item, as well as a Great Ghost Glovewort. The nearby portal will take us to our entry point of the city, and we can fast travel to Ranni's Rise from there. Giving Ranni the Fingerslayer Blade will cause Celavis to die, so make sure you complete his quest if that is something you want to do. Then give Ranni the Fingerslayer Blade. Once we do that, she should give us the Carrion Inverted Statue. After exhausting all of her dialogue and reloading the game, Ranni should be gone, leaving behind a new Site of Grace. From Ranni's Rise, we will then need to head northeast to Renna's Rise, which we should now be able to enter. As a quick bonus, we can open the chest near the top of the ladder to get the Snow Witch armor set, then make our way up to the top of the tower and take the portal there to Ainsel River. Since we are here, we might as well pick up the miniature Ranni and speak with her 3 times at the Site of Grace to progress her quest, although this is not necessary to get the Glovewort bell bearings. The first part of this area walkthrough will be showing where to get the map for it, so you can skip ahead if you already have it. For everyone else, we'll need to head southwest past the Naturalborn and down the tunnel. We'll then need to go southwest at the fork, past some giant ants, and into the Uhl Palace ruins. We can grab the Wing of Estelle from a chest at the top of the ruins, then carefully drop down to the lower level and deal with another Naturalborn enemy. Afterwards, we'll drop down a little further to find a secluded merchant as well as the Ainsel River map. There is a Site of Grace that we'll want to activate before leaving this area to make returning to it easier. Now, to reach Nokstella, we'll start from the Ainsel River main site of Grace once more, and head down the tunnel to the southwest again. This time though, instead of going southwest at the fork, we will go down the northwest tunnel to reach Nokstella. For the bell bearing, we will start at the Nokstella site of Grace and move northwest, up several flights of stairs. Near the large group of Mimic Tears, we'll go into the chamber to the southwest, where the Ghost Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearing 2 is waiting. I recommend continuing up into the Citadel, as there is a large chamber where another Great Ghost Glovewort can be obtained, and a Mimic Tear Ball will also drop down, which can be defeated for another larval tear. If you go to the very end of it, there are a couple more Mimic Tears to be gotten, as well as the Moon of Nokstella, a legendary talisman. Finally, the southern exit from the room with the talisman leads to a lift, which will take us down to a golden seed. I'll leave a link near the bottom of this video's description to a guide for Ranni's quest, for anyone that wants to complete the final few steps, but it is otherwise beyond the scope of this video and can also be done at any time. The bell bearing we got here unlocks Ghost Gloveworts 4, 5, and 6 at the Twin Maiden Husks. Fortunately, we've already covered how to reach the Haligtree earlier in this video, so I will assume that everyone is able to reach the Drainage Channel site of Grace, which is near the third Ghost Glovewort bell bearing. From the site of Grace, we'll head out the northeast opening and move north along the branches. Some jumping between stone arches and branches will be needed to reach the lower area. Along the way, feel free to jump through the roof of this church-like structure, which will allow you to access a chest containing the legendary Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, which is a great defensive piece of equipment. Also, watch out for the pests, as the ones in this area are very strong. We'll need to head out the north opening of the church and make our way down to the northwest edge of this area. There, we should find the Ghost Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearing 3, next to a grave surrounded by more pests. It unlocks Ghost Gloveworts 7, 8, and 9 at the Twin Maiden Husks. Now let's cover where to get all the Great Grave Gloveworts, of which there are 6 and are used to upgrade standard ashes from +9 to +10, as well as the Great Ghost Gloveworts, of which there are 4 and are used to upgrade Renowned Ashes from +9 to +10. We've already covered 2 of the Great Ghost Gloveworts while getting the Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearings. The first was northeast of the Knight's Sacred Ground site of Grace, in the same chest that contains the Fingerslayer Blade for Ranni's quest. The second was in Nokstella Eternal City, north of the Ghost Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearing 2, across a bridge and in the large chamber to the east. For the remaining Great Ghost Gloveworts, one is actually super easy to get and is right near the Dynasty Mausoleum midpoint site of Grace. From there, we'll move southwest into the Dark Cave. Dropping into the southern pit, we'll find a Great Ghost Glovewort ripe for the picking, amidst a bunch of those exploding bleed zombies. The final Great Ghost Glovewort is near the Ainsel River South site of Grace, which we discovered right after getting the map for that region. From there, we'll move west further down the river, turning north near the group of giant ants. the next chamber, we'll move northeast to find another small tunnel, which will lead to a huge cavern, where we will need to defeat a dragonkin soldier boss. Once it's defeated, we can open the chest to the west to claim the final Great Ghost Glovewort. Now onto the Great Grave Gloveworts, and these can be a pain because half of them are found in high-level catacombs. Let's cover the easiest one first, which is near the Drainage Channel Site of Grace in the Haligtree. From there, we'll move west and climb the ladder. Then move northwest up a small hill and across a tree branch to the south towards a small pond of rot. The Great Grave Glovewort is on a body near the south side of the pond. Be warned though that approaching it will cause a scarlet rot tree spirit to burst from the pond, and it is fairly difficult to fight in the small area. Fire is a really effective damage type against it though, and it drops a golden seed when defeated. For the next two Gloveworts, we'll need to go to the Consecrated Snowfield Site of Grace and move northeast, with the mountainside on our east. It's easy to get lost, but hopefully showing the precise map location of this dungeon will help you locate it in your own game. Finding it is hard enough, but this also has to be one of the most brutal catacombs, and a ranged weapon is definitely recommended. Heading up the first staircase, we'll watch out for the imp waiting in ambush. Once it's been dealt with, we can use our ranged weapon to shoot and lower the ice thrower to the south. Moving south, there is another imp that will jump out from the hallway on our east, which is also the direction we need to move in. Turning south at the boss room, be careful as you climb the steps as another ice thrower is waiting in the distance. We can shoot it to lower it, then run up to it and hit it once more to raise it. This will allow us to run down the western hallway without getting hit. Again, there will be another imp waiting to ambush us. To progress in this next chamber, we need to find the secret hallway that is beneath the staircase and leads east towards a room with a clean rot knight. Once again, watch out for the ice thrower while climbing the stairs to the north, and shoot it with a ranged weapon if needed to lower it. There is also another imp waiting to ambush us. We can then roll onto the top of the ice thrower to trigger it and raise us up to the top floor. There, we'll find the lever that opens the boss room doors. I lowered the ice thrower when making my way back to the boss room so that it wouldn't hit me from behind. For how dangerous this dungeon is, the boss, a putrid Grave Warden duelist, is fairly easy. He drops the Rotten Gravekeeper cloak when defeated, along with 2 Great Grave Gloveworts. The next Great Grave Glovewort is located in the Giant Conquering Hero's grave. To reach it, we'll start at the Giant's Gravepost Site of Grace, then move southwest along the northern edge of the mountain. we will need to clear a small gap before heading the rest of the way west to this hero's grave. We don't actually have to clear this whole dungeon to get the Glovewort, just go to a specific spot. Again, a ranged weapon is recommended. We'll start by running down the first hall to the south, then turn west and roll through an illusory wall. We can jump south out a window and go down a short hallway, shooting the flamethrower to the west to lower it, before heading in that direction. We'll then go up the stairs to the south, running all the way to a lift, which will take us to a lower level. The trick here is to activate the lift on the bottom, then step off it as it rises back up. This will reveal a secret compartment that we can take to an even lower level. To do this, pull the nearby lever and quickly step into the secret compartment before it lowers out of sight. Once at the bottom, move south and turn east at the intersection. We'll climb the ladder there to reach a chamber with a fire prelate. On the east side of the prelate is the Great Grave Glovewort, which we can grab before making our escape by retracing our steps. The only difference is that, in the chamber with the two watchdogs, we'll need to run to the west side of the chamber and climb a very tall ladder there to get back to the room with the lift. Once there, we can hop down to the east and find the lift on the north side of the room. We'll go ahead and retrace our steps to the first large chamber, then climb the steps on the east side to get back to the entrance. The final two Great Grave Gloveworts are both located in Crumbling Farum Azula and are thankfully easy to get. For the first one, we'll start at the Crumbling Beast Grave depths and move through the chamber to the northwest, climbing out the western windows and up onto a nearby roof. We'll then enter the second story and move to the northeast side, where the Great Grave Glovewort is waiting. We can then make our escape to the Tempest-facing balcony site of grace. The final Great Grave Glovewort is only a short distance from this site of grace. We'll start by scaling down the crumbling ruins towards the north. After crossing the floating pillars or columns, we'll drop into the nearby hole, landing on a lower section of ruins. We'll go through the first door to the northwest, then cross another floating column to the southwest, jumping to the secluded area and climbing up the ladder there. This will take us to a small chamber where the final Great Grave Glovewort is waiting. There is also a cool shortcut we can take to reach the Dragon Temple Site of Grace from here, which I'll show now. That covers all of the essentials as far as upgrade materials are concerned, but now let's cover some other important items such as memory stones, talisman pouches, pots, and perfume bottles, and wet blades. We'll begin with the talisman pouches as those are pretty hard to miss. We start the game with 1 talisman slot and can get 3 more throughout the game via talisman pouches. The first pouch is obtained after defeating Margit the Fell Omen near the entrance of Stormvale Castle. The second pouch is obtained by speaking with Finger Reader Enya after defeating 2 Shardbearer bosses, which you will have done if you followed this guide. The final talisman pouch is obtained by defeating the Golden Shade form of Godfrey in Lanedell, which is also mandatory to do in order to reach the Mountaintops of the Giants. Next up, let's cover memory stones. These allow us to memorize more spells at a time, and there are 8 in total. The first one can be purchased from the Twin Maiden Husks in Round Table Hold for 3,000 runes. The next is obtained for defeating the Red Wolf of Radahn in the Academy of Raya Lucaria. If you don't know how to enter Raya Lucaria, you'll just need to obtain the Academy Glintstone Key, which can be found on a body that is behind Glintstone Dragon Smaragd, a short distance southeast of the foot of the 4 Belfries Site of Grace. With a Glintstone key in hand, the Academy can be entered at either Raya Lucaria gate, but I prefer the east one as it's easier to reach. All that is left to do is journey through Raya Lucaria, reach the debate parlor, and defeat the Red Wolf of Radahn boss. That's 2 down with 6 to go. We'll start at Orvidice's Rise and Weeping Peninsula, which can be reached by using the Spirit Spring to the east of the Castle Morn Rampart Site of Grace. Feel free to grab the Turtle Shell Shield along the way too. We'll need to examine the plaque in front of the Rise, then destroy the 3 turtle shades that appear. The first should be right behind us, north of the plaque. The second will be hiding in a bush on the east side of the staircase. The third and last will be invisible in the pond on the west side of the Rise. The occasional pitter-patter of water in the pond should give away its position, or you can just swing wildly until you hit it. After all 3 turtle shades are destroyed, the Rise will open, and we can go claim our memory stone from the top. The 4th memory stone is atop the converted tower in Western Liurnia. Entering this tower the proper way requires completing Tops's quest to get the Erudition gesture. However, at the time of making this video, we can just use Torrent to climb the walls surrounding the tower and jump over to the 2nd level, bypassing the puzzle altogether. The 5th memory stone is also in Liurnia at Testu's Rise, which is on the north side of the lake. After examining the plaque, we'll need to find and destroy 3 turtle shades. The first is on the ground, a short distance north of the Rise. For the second, we'll move clockwise around the tower. The turtle should be up on a tree on the east side of the Rise. The last turtle is sort of off the side of the aisle, on the south side of the Rise. Once all 3 turtle shades are destroyed, the seal on Testu's Rise will open, allowing us to enter and claim our prize. Memory stone number 6 is also in Liurnia, up at Celavis's Rise. We can start from Ranni's Rise, then make our way down southeast to Celavis's Rise. We can use either the ladder inside or climb up the wall on the outside to reach the top floor where the memory stone is waiting. While here, we might as well grab the Black Wolf Mask, which is atop the wall surrounding Celevis's Rise. For the 7th Memory Stone, we'll need to reach Lenne's Rise and Caelid. This can be done by running south of Bestial Sanctum across the Farum Great Bridge. Once on the south side, use the Spirit Spring to safely jump down next to the Rise, then use the Spirit Spring once more to jump high up in the air and double jump over to the upper level of Lenne's Rise. We'll just need to climb up the remaining stairs to reach the Memory Stone. The 8th and final Memory Stone is a bit tricky to reach if you've never done it before. It is dropped by demi-human Queen Maggie near the primeval sorcerer Azur Site of Grace in Mount Gelmir. The easiest way to reach this location starts at the Erdtree Gazing Hill Site of Grace. From there, we'll move northeast up the same path we took to get to the Windham Catacombs. This time though, we'll move northwest around the Windham Ruins to reach the Seethwater River Site of Grace. From there, we'll move north and eventually west through the river, avoiding the spouting geysers along the way. This will eventually bring us to the Seethwater Terminus Site of Grace. From there, we'll move southwest past several skirmishing enemies to reach a pool of lava. Unless you've already defeated it, a magma worm will emerge from the lava and attack. Feel free to fight it, but it's not necessary. Instead, we can move southeast past several hostile demi-humans and tombs. We'll continue following this path as it turns east, eventually entering the Hermit Village. Demi-human Queen Maggie is on the north side of the village, but I actually recommend running past her at first to discover and rest at the primeval sorcerer Azur Site of Grace. As a quick bonus, we can interact with Sorcerer Azur, the green crystal-covered guy sitting in the nearby chair, to get Comet Azur, a legendary sorcery. In any case, defeating demi-human Queen Maggie will get us our final Memory Stone. Next up, let's cover cracked and ritual pots as well as perfume bottles. I'm going to cover these in an order that hopefully will reduce the amount of backtracking that needs to be done. We'll start with cracked pots that can be purchased from merchants. The first 3 can be purchased from Kale at the Church of Ile. While here, make sure you buy the crafting kit if you haven't already, as it's needed to make use of all of these pots and bottles. The next cracked pot can be purchased from the nomadic merchant on the east side of the Saints Bridge in Limgrave. The 5th cracked pot can be purchased from the nomadic merchant near the Castlemorn Rampart in Weeping Peninsula. The final cracked pot that can be purchased is sold by the nomadic merchant in Caelid, along the road that leads east from the Caelid Highway South Site of Grace. As a quick note, this cracked pot will not be available if you chose the cracked pots as your keepsake when making your character. There are 20 cracked pots in total, so we've still got a few to go. The 7th cracked pot is in the Groveside Cave, a short distance north of the Church of Ile. It can be found just after walking in on a body in the pit that is full of wolves. For the next 2, we'll start at the secluded cell Site of Grace in Stormvale Castle, then head southwest until we reach some warrior jars. The 2 cracked pots will be found amongst them. The 10th cracked pot is near the Debate Parlor Site of Grace in Rea Lucaria. Head out the north opening, then climb the staircase to the west. The cracked pot will be on the ground in front of a Twin Sage Sorcerer. Next up, we'll go to the Royal Moongazing Grounds Site of Grace in Liurnia. From here, we'll go through the southeast opening, then turn sharply south to find a small exit hidden amongst the foliage. We'll need to carefully drop down to the mountainside below, where several warrior jars are wandering around. Our 10th cracked pot will be waiting near the southeast ledge. The 12th cracked pot is near the minor Erdtree in northwest Caelid. The closest site of grace that I have discovered is the Smoldering Church, so that's where I'm starting at. We'll move northeast until reaching the minor Erdtree, and we should be able to see the cracked pot sitting near the end of a branch that juts out over the sea. It's probably a smart idea to defeat the putrid avatar before going for the cracked pot, so that you don't get knocked off by its ranged attacks. The 13th cracked pot is in Lanedale Royal Capital. Starting from the Avenue Balcony Site of Grace, we'll move out the southeast opening to the avenue, then head northeast. Near the end of the avenue, we'll head north into a courtyard, entering the structure on the west side, where a lift will take us to the lower level. We can run west, jumping along the rooftops to grab a free black bow along the way. Then drop down and cross a small bridge to the northwest. On the other side, we'll go through a door to the southwest to find our next cracked pot. As a quick bonus, if we keep moving southwest, we can climb a short ladder to reach the lower capital church, where the Lionel's armor set, along with a deathbed dress, can be found. Next up, let's head to Jarburg in Liurnia for multiple cracked pots and ritual pots, and as a quick warning, don't attack the jars here, they are all friendly and one of them, Jarbairn, even has his own quest. I reached Jarburg by heading southeast from the Artist's Shack Site of Grace. On the south side of the Carrion Study Hall, or the large stone tower, there are some large tombstones jutting out from the cliff wall. We can carefully jump down these to reach Jarburg. Again, don't attack the jars here, they are friendly. Starting from the Site of Grace, we'll find a cracked pot directly to our northeast. We can then move northwest and jump up on top of the northwestmost hut to grab a ritual pot. The next cracked pot is in the hut to our northeast, and the final one is on the doorstep of the house we just jumped off of. The final ritual pot is a short distance south atop a planting pot that has been stylized to look like a warrior jar. That brings our total number of cracked pots to 16 of 20 and ritual pots to 2 of 10. The next spot where we'll find our remaining cracked pots and 2 more ritual pots is the Ariza side tomb on the outskirts of Lanedale. To reach it, we can start at the Capital Rampart Site of Grace and move northeast. At the end of the bridge, we'll turn northwest to go around the wall, then southwest. We should see a spirit spring that makes getting down to the path below easier, but if it's not there, you can always get down safely with a few additional jumps. In any case, from here, it's just a short distance northeast to reach the somewhat obscure entrance to the Ariza side tomb. I'm pretty sure that this is the most confusing dungeon in the entire game, and I messed up my walkthrough of it with my first character, so I'm using a different character for the walkthrough in this video. This dungeon has a total of 4 cracked pots and 2 ritual pots. However, if you chose the cracked pots as your keepsake in character creation, then 2 of the cracked pots will be missing, though I'm not sure which ones those are. To start, we'll go down the first staircase and turn northeast at the boss room. This will lead us to a small chamber with a window to the northwest that we can jump out of. Going down the stairs, we'll move through the corridor to the southwest, then turn to the northwest. I highly recommend defeating the imps in this area before interacting with the teleporter chest at the end of the hall, as they can very much damage and kill you while teleporting. Opening this chest will teleport us to a prison cell of sorts where we will need to deal with 2 warrior jars before picking up the 2 cracked pots and the Perfumer's Cookbook 3. Afterwards, we will use the teleporter chest in the prison cell to return to our previous location. From here, we'll move a short distance southeast, then roll into the illusory wall to our southwest. This will dispel it, revealing a chamber with another teleporter chest. This is where it can get confusing, as this chest will teleport us to a chamber that looks almost identical to the one we were recently in, but it's actually one we've never been in before. All we need to do is drop down and move southeast down a set of stairs. The teleporter chest here will take us where we need to go. This time, when arriving at the top floor, we'll move southeast through a small doorway, then climb the ladder to our northeast. We'll use the teleporter chest here, which will take us to another room that looks familiar but is actually new. We'll climb the staircase to the southeast, which leads into a chamber containing the first ritual pot in this dungeon. Doubling back, we'll then jump out the window to the southwest and turn around to find the second ritual pot, in a chamber to our northeast. From here, we'll move southwest and down the stairs, traveling what seems to be the same initial path that we took to reach our first teleporter chest. The chest at the end of this hall, however, will take us to a new prison cell where we can get our last 2 cracked pots. We can then climb the nearby ladder to reach the lever that opens the boss chamber doors. To reach the boss room, we'll drop down, climb the stairs to the southeast, and use the teleporter chest in the following room. From here, we just need to move down the hall and cross over to the southwest side of the following chamber to reach the boss room. The boss is fairly easy and drops the Soul Jars of Fortune Ash of War when defeated. We should have all 20 cracked pots at this point, and we only have 6 more ritual pots to get. Actually, let's make that 5 ritual pots, as we already covered how to get the ritual pot in the Giant's Mountaintops catacombs as part of getting the Grave Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearing 2. and going through that dungeon one time is enough. In any case, Ritual Pot number 6 is located in Liurnia. It is a short distance northwest of the Last Gear Ruins Site of Grace. The 7th Ritual Pot is in Rea Lucaria. From the Schoolhouse Classroom Site of Grace, head through the south opening, then go west and move all the way to the end of the hall. The Ritual Pot will be in a chest that is guarded by several glintstone sorcerers. The 8th Ritual Pot is closest to the Forsaken Depths Site of Grace in the subterranean Shunning-Grounds of Flamedell. However, if you already have that Site of Grace discovered, then you probably already have the Ritual Pot too. So instead, let's pick up where we left off in the Shunning-Grounds when we covered how to get Mohg's Shackle. We'll start at the underground roadside Site of Grace and head through the shortcut that we opened to the southeast. Jumping on top of the highest pipe to the southwest, we'll run to the end of it, which joins with the southeast wall. We can then drop down to the pipe below and, watching for the imp waiting in ambush, make our way to the northern door. Again, watch out for the imp. We'll jump into the pipe below and follow the rat southeast, then down the smaller pipe northwest. There is another enemy waiting to ambush us as we drop down into the hole to our northeast, but if we just make sure to keep moving northeast after dropping down, we should get by unscathed. Keep following the only way forward and drop down the ladder to reach a chamber with several warrior jars. The Ritual Pot is in the north corner. From here, we can take the nearby lift to reach the Forsaken Depths Site of Grace. The 9th Ritual Pot can be purchased from Pydia, Carrion's servant. To reach him, we'll start at Ronnie's Rise and head southeast to Celavis's Rise. From there, we can move east along the cliffside until we reach a series of drops that are short enough for us to make it down safely. If we completed Celavis's quest or enough of Ronnie's questline, then Pydia will be dead. Fortunately, he will drop his bell bearing, which we can give to the Twin Maiden husks at Roundtable Hold. We can then buy the 9th Ritual Pot from them, as well as several other useful items. For the 10th and final Ritual Pot, we'll need to reach the Isolated Merchant in Caelid. This can be done easily enough by following the road west from Fort Feroth or Dragon Barrow Fork. The Isolated Merchant sells this last Ritual Pot for 3,000 runes. Before moving on, you might be wondering what to do with these pots once you've gotten them all. Well, with the crafting kit from Kale, we can craft anything that we have the recipe and ingredients for. This includes all sorts of pots that can be thrown for different effects. Two that are considered very powerful are the freezing and sleep pots. To craft sleep pots, we will need the Thiever's Cookbook 1. It can be found near the Summonwater Village Site of Grace in Liurnia. From there, we'll need to move southeast, then hop down the large tombstones towards the southwest. The cookbook can be found on a body sitting atop a sarcophagus. To make the sleep pots, we'll then need one empty cracked pot, a Trina's lily, and a mushroom. Mushrooms are easy enough to farm, as there are 3 that can be harvested near the village of the Albinaurics Site of Grace, and they respawn when resting at a Site of Grace. The Trina's lilies are a bit trickier, as the ones found in the open world don't respawn, and enemies that do drop them generally have low chances to do so. Still, the best place to farm them is probably a tree that is just a few steps from the Apostate Derelict Site of Grace. The tree has around 11 Trina's lilies surrounding it, which can only be picked up once. However, the spirit jellyfish here have an 8% chance to drop them, and they respawn when resting at a site of grace. Like any crafted pot, the sleep pots are consumed after a single use, but the empty pots used to craft them do get refunded. You'll just need to farm more mushrooms and lilies to make more. On the other hand, to craft freeze pots, we'll need the Glintstone Craftsman's Cookbook 6. It can be found near the main Caria Manor Gate site of grace. From there, we'll enter the manor grounds and turn east, then run all the way to the building ahead. There we'll find our cookbook. All we need to craft freeze pots are rhymed crystal buds. Fortunately, these are super easy to farm in the Consecrated Snowfield. Just head west from the inner Consecrated Snowfield site of grace to the giant tree that is surrounded with red flowers. Dozens of rhymed crystal buds can be harvested around this tree, and they respawn when resting at a site of grace. From what I've seen, these can be very strong in PvP and against certain bosses such as Malenia. It is also very possible, even likely, that we will get new pot recipes in the DLC, and now we should have all the pots needed to make use of them. Moving on, a similar category of craftable consumable requires empty perfume bottles, and there are 10 of them in total. Fortunately, they are all pretty easy and quick to get. The first is in the Volcano Manor. After joining the manor, we'll move to the Northwest Hall and open the first door on our right. The perfume bottle will be on a body sitting in front of an illusory wall. For the next two, we'll go to Lanedale. Starting at the East Capital Rampart, we'll move west out into the city. We can then run south along the rampart until reaching a lift, which will take us down closer to the city streets. In the building up ahead, we'll see a perfumer near a ladder. Climbing that ladder will take us to a room where we'll find the perfume bottle in a chest. For our third perfume bottle, we'll go to the Avenue Balcony site of grace, then run northeast down the avenue. Beyond the pair of doors at the end, we'll reach a severely ruined part of the capital. Moving along the southeast edge of this area, we'll eventually reach a dead end where a perfume bottle can be found. Just watch out for the Lionel Misbegotten guarding it. The fourth perfume bottle is within the Shaded Castle, which can be reached by going north through the ravine that is east of the Erdtree Gazing Hill site of grace. Starting from the Shaded Castle Rampart site of grace, we'll move west and drop down into the outer courtyard. Continuing west, we'll eventually reach a ladder that we can climb up to the inner ramparts. From there, we'll move northeast, eventually jumping down to the inner courtyard and moving further east to a second ladder. Once up top, we'll move west along the ramparts, defeat the depraved perfumer in our way, and pick up the perfume bottle behind them. The fifth perfume bottle can be found near the Aeonia Swamp Shore site of grace. We'll move north to the Street of Sages ruins. The perfume bottle will be found on a body in one of the more eastern ruins. We'll also get the perfumer's armor set, which is a nice bonus. Perfume bottle number 6 is located in the Perfumer's Grotto, which is east of the Altus Highway Junction. The entrance of this grotto is somewhat hidden by a Miranda flower near the entrance. Once inside, we'll move through the cave system, sticking to the east side. We'll eventually enter a chamber with a Miranda flower, and we can drop down to a small pit with 2 chests. The perfume bottle will be in one of them. The 7th perfume bottle is also near the Altus Highway Junction site of Grace. It's just a short distance northwest at an unmarked camp with 2 omens. For our 8th perfume bottle, we'll need to make our way up to the Hermit Merchant's Shack, which is northwest of the Capital Ramparts or the entrance to Lanedale. The merchant sells a single perfume bottle for 2,000 runes. Our last 2 perfume bottles can be found in the Perfumer's Ruins. To reach it, travel down the small path that is west of the Erdtree Gazing Hill site of Grace. This should take you to the abandoned Coffin site of Grace, and the Perfumer's Ruins are just a short distance northwest of there. The ruins are fairly small, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find the 2 perfume bottles laying about. There is also a chest containing the Perfumer's Cookbook 1. This also happens to contain 2 of the more useful perfume bottle recipes, the Spark Aromatic and Uplifting Aromatic. The great thing about the Spark Aromatic is that it's super easy to farm the necessary ingredients. There are dozens of Altus blooms near the Perfumer's Ruins and plenty of Miranda flowers in the shallow lake to the east. All of these sources for materials respawn when resting at a site of grace. Up next are the various bell-bearing hunter locations, which drop bell bearings that unlock useful consumables or ingredients at the Twin Maiden husks. There are 4 in total, and each one is more difficult than the last. The first is at the War Master's Shack. In order for the hunter to spawn, we need to speak with whatever NPC is nearby. In this case, it will be Bernal, unless we've already joined the Volcano Manor, in which case he won't be here. Next, we'll need to pass time until night, stand up, then rest at the site of grace once more. If there was an NPC at this location, they should be missing, and instead, the bell-bearing hunter will spawn in when we approach the normal NPC's usual spot. The first bell-bearing hunter drops the Bone Peddler's bell-bearing. The next bell-bearing hunter is at the Church of Vows in Liurnia. Once again, we need to go speak with the NPC, in this case a giant talking tortoise named Muriel. We'll want to exhaust all of their dialogue, and Muriel has a lot to say. In any case, we can then repeat the same process from before. Pass time until night, stand up, rest once more, and then Muriel should be gone. The bell-bearing hunter will spawn as we approach the statue near the back of the church. This one drops the Meat Peddler's bell-bearing. The next bell-bearing hunter will spawn in at the Hermit Merchant's Shack in Altus Plateau. After a quick introduction, we can pass time till night, and so on. This bell-bearing hunter will drop the Medicine Peddler's bell-bearing, which is one of the more useful ones to have. It will allow us to purchase an unlimited number of boluses from the Twin Maiden husks that cure buildup of sleep, bleed, freeze, and poison. The final bell-bearing hunter is ridiculously tough and spawns at night in the isolated Merchant's Shack located in Caelid. At this point, you're probably familiar with the process for getting the hunter to appear, and this one drops the Gravity Stone Peddler's bell-bearing when defeated. Up next, we've got Wet Blades. These allow us to apply Ashes of War to our weapons with various affinities besides the base affinity of the Ash of War. There are 6 in total. The first is the basic Whetstone Knife. It is located in a cellar a short distance southeast of the Gatefront Site of Grace. It doesn't do anything special besides allowing us to apply Ashes of War to weapons. We've already gotten the Black Wet Blade when covering how to get the Ghost Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearings 1 and 2. It is located in Night's Sacred Ground and unlocks the Poison, Blood, and Occult affinities for Ashes of War. Next up is the Iron Wet Blade. Starting from the Liftside Chamber Site of Grace in Stormveil Castle, we'll run out the east opening, then move southeast across the battlefield and into the central doorway. Moving forward, we will enter the room where a grafted scion can be found. From here, we'll move to the door near the western corner. We can dispel the fog blocking our path with a stone sword key, and in the chamber that we can now access, we'll find a couple of unique items, along with the Iron Wet Blade, which unlocks the Heavy, Keen, and Quality affinities for Ashes of War. Moving on, we'll get the Glintstone Wet Blade located in Raya Lucaria. From the Debate Parlor Site of Grace, run out the north side, then move up the ruined stairs to the northwest and through the first doorway you see. The Glintstone Wet Blade will be sitting on a body hanging over a window ledge and unlocks the Magic and Cold affinities for Ashes of War. The Red Hot Wet Blade can be found in Redmane Castle in Caelid. Starting at the chamber outside the Plaza Site of Grace, we'll move out the south doorway and then run northwest, past the flamethrower turrets and an Abductor Virgin / Iron Maiden looking thing, into a small chamber where the Red Hot Wet Blade is waiting. It unlocks the Fire and Flame Art affinities for Ashes of War. Finally, we have the Sanctified Wet Blade. Starting from the West Capital Rampart, we'll move south for a short distance before dropping down to the west and making our way up into the fortified manor. The Sanctified Wet Blade can be found in the Forge Room near several scattered weapons and unlocks the Lightning and Sacred affinities for Ashes of War. There are also several other unique items to loot within the manor, so be sure to look around before leaving. And this is probably a good time to discuss Sacred Tears and Golden Seeds for upgrading one of the most important tools at our disposal, the Flask of Crimson and/or Cerulean Tears. Golden Seeds are used to increase the number of these flasks, and Sacred Tears are used to increase their potency. The maximum number of flasks that can be held is 14 and requires a total of 30 golden seeds to attain. Meanwhile, the max potency of the flasks is plus 12 and requires collecting all 12 Sacred Tears to get. Fortunately, there are more than 30 golden seeds that can be obtained in a single playthrough, and I highly recommend an interactive map to help find them. However, I will give the location of 5 that I had to go out of my way to find. If you've been following this guide up to this point, then none of these should be too difficult to reach. The first is a short distance southwest of the Freezing Lake Site of Grace in the Mountaintops of the Giants, just past a giant golem enemy. The second is in Liurnia, a short distance northwest of the Academy Gate Town Site of Grace. The third is in the Seofer River, which you can reach via the Seofer River Well in Limgrave. The Golden Seed is located northwest of the Worshipper's Woods Site of Grace, across a natural stone bridge. The fourth Golden Seed is in the Lanedale capital outskirts. To get it, you'll need to defeat an ulcerated tree spirit that spawns in at an unmarked camp just south of the Outer Wall Phantom Tree Site of Grace. The fifth Golden Seed is in Lanedale Royal Capital. To get this one, you'll need to defeat an ulcerated tree spirit that spawns in a short distance northwest of the Avenue Balcony Site of Grace. Alright, moving on to Sacred Tears, we have 4 in Limgrave/Weeping Peninsula. They can be found at the Third Church of America, Calu Baptismal Church, Church of Pilgrimage, and Fourth Church of America. There are 3 Sacred Tears in Liurnia, and they can be found at the Church of Erith, Bellum Church, and the Church of Inhibition. There is 1 Sacred Tear in Caelid, and it can be found at the Church of the Plague. There are 2 Sacred Tears in Altus Plateau, and they can be found at the Second Church of America and the Stormcaller Church. Finally, there are 2 Sacred Tears in the Mountaintops of the Giants, and they can be found at the Church of Repose, and finally, the First Church of America. The last consumables we should talk about are Rune Arcs, Larval Tears, and Stone Sword Keys. Rune Arcs are needed for activating the powers of Great Runes. Larval Tears are needed to respec attribute points at Renala, and Stone Sword Keys are needed to access a lot of various dungeons, Everjails, or other minor locations. Larval Tears are limited, but one of the easiest ways to get them are to kill any Mimic Tear Ball enemies you come across. Mimic Tears will also try to hide in plain sight by disguising themselves as nearby enemy types. A wiki page or interactive map can definitely help you locate these. As far as Rune Arcs go, they can be obtained by aiding other players in defeating bosses in online PvE, or by defeating enemy players in online PvP. They can also be earned the same way through the few NPC invasion opportunities scattered throughout the open world. Good examples being Magnus the Beastclaw and all of the Volcano Manor targets. Stone Sword Keys are found throughout the open world, the only indication being that they are a blue glowing item orb on the ground. In addition, the Stone Sword Keys, along with Rune Arcs and sometimes even Larval Tears, will be sold in limited quantities by specific merchants or other NPCs. My advice is to just buy all of them whenever you see any for sale. Getting near the end here, let's talk about rune farming and item farming. Both of these will be made much easier with the help of 2 different talismans. The first is the Gold Scarab Talisman, which can be obtained at the Abandoned Cave Dungeon in Caelid. To reach it, ride east from the Smoldering Wall Site of Grace, and carefully cross some tree roots to reach the entrance. There is a lot of Scarlet Rot to get through in this cave, so I recommend bringing along the Flame Cleanse Me incantation, which can be picked up at an unmarked camp that is southeast of the Church of Vows in Liurnia. The Gold Scarab Talisman is obtained by defeating the Clean Rot Knight duo in the Abandoned Cave, and increases runes gained from defeating enemies. The second talisman we should get is the Silver Scarab, which, now that I think about it, we already got earlier in the video when discussing how to reach Mohgwyn Palace. This talisman increases item drop rate from enemies, which can be very helpful for farming items. One example being Trina's Lilies from those spirit jellyfish near the Apostate Derelict. As far as rune farming goes, the best place to do this is and has always been the Palace Approach Ledge Road Site of Grace in the outskirts of Mohgwyn Palace. The best tool for farming the frog-like Albinaurics here for runes is a fully upgraded Sacred Relic sword. The only issue is that getting this sword requires defeating the final boss in the game, and for reasons previously discussed, I'm not sure how I feel about doing that. That being said, if you defeated the final boss anyways or are in New Game Plus, then you should definitely have access to this sword. I would say it is definitely worth upgrading for the sole reason that you can farm hundreds of thousands of runes per minute with it at this location. Equip that gold Scarab, pass time until night so that the rune-enriched enemies with glowing gold eyes are more likely to spawn, then use a single skill attack to wipe out the majority of the Albinaurics, rest at the Site of Grace, rinse and repeat. Another way to farm runes here is to rest at the Site of Grace, immediately stand up, and run to the northwest ledge, then aim at and shoot the giant bird down below. 9 times out of 10, it will run off the cliff edge and give you around 15,000 runes. The nice thing about this rune farming method is that it can be done at any level, assuming you can reach this spot and have a ranged weapon. Alright, last but not least, my build. And honestly, this is just what works well for me, and I am sure there are other people that can give more focused build advice. But regardless, here we go. To start, it's good to have at least 51 poise, but more is not a bad thing. Look up poise breakpoints if you want to delve into that rabbit hole and really min-max your character. For most people, 51 poise is enough, and will allow you to shrug off a ton of basic attacks that would otherwise interrupt actions you are trying to perform. The Great Jar's Arsenal Talisman is great for increasing equip load so that you can hit that 51 poise without stepping over into the heavy load category. You can get this talisman by completing the Great Jar's Trial. To reach it, head north from the Worshipper's Woods Site of Grace until you reach this lift here. Insert the necessary stone sword keys to ride the lift up to a secluded area in Caelid, then move north until you reach the Colosseum. Speak with the Great Jar and then defeat his 3 champions, which are summoned through red summoning signs, and I think this is easier to do in offline mode. Once that's done, speak to the Great Jar once more to claim your prize. In addition to that talisman, you'll probably need an endurance of around 20 to reach 51 poise without crossing into that heavy load category. This is a good time to discuss attribute points. If you are planning to do PvP, then a good level to cap yourself at is 150, as that is the level that most PvP players stay around. If your level is far above or below 150, you will have a hard time finding other players to match against. On the other hand, if you have no intention of doing any PvP, then by all means, level up to your heart's content. In any case, regardless of your build, 60 Vigor is a good core stat to shoot for. It is a soft cap for HP, and you will see a significant diminishment in returns for any additional points invested in Vigor. As for Mind, if you use any FP, unofficially referred to as mana, at all, then 38 Mind is a good soft cap. At 38 Mind, you have just enough FP to where a maxed out flask of Cerulean Tears will barely replenish all of your FP from empty to full. As far as other stats go, just allocate them depending on what gear and or spells you want to use. I am a Faith build with the Blasphemous Blade as my main form of carry, so I invested the majority of my points into Faith and the remainder in Strength and Dexterity. As far as other talismans go, I really like the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Radahn Sword Seal, and Shard of Alexander to increase the damage of the Blasphemous Blade weapon skill. This build is extremely easy to use and is overpowered against most bosses. It only struggles against bosses that are resistant to fire, such as the Fire Giant and Mohg, Lord of Blood. I'm also guessing that it will struggle against the final boss of the DLC, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now, I did not expect this video to be as long as it is. Hopefully the YouTube algorithm likes it anyways, and hopefully you found it useful as well. Be sure to check that pinned comment for new information as time goes on, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me in the comments where I will do my best to help. If you want to see more great content, you can head over to my channel, and if you're new, consider subscribing. You're helping me feed my cat, her name's Marshmallow. Have a great day if you're here today, have a great Friday, and a great weekend, and as always, thanks for watching.